Hi guys, Mac here. We're trying something a little bit new here. We're going to do some series of training videos, and we thought perhaps we could start off with a new piece of kit we've got for the HHAC community, and we've got a Hartke Hydrive 2x10 bass amplifier here. And I just thought I'd give you a little bit of a walkthrough, a little bit of familiarity with the bass amp before we dive in and actually start going through each control piece by piece. And so let's give it a little bit of an overview. The Hartke Hydrive is a 2x10 configuration, so it has two 10-inch woofers or two 10-inch drivers in it with a horn as well. Now the horn can be turned on or off, or it can be attenuated by 6 dB, and that really helps if you want a more mellow sound. You can turn the horn off. If you want a brighter sound, you can turn the horn on, or you can find the middle ground by attenuating the horn by 6 dB. The amp is designed in a monitor wedge configuration. So it can be placed on the floor like a traditional monitor wedge, or it can be put up on an amp stand like we have it here today. And that way you can change the angle of the amplifier so that it is basically in any position you want it to be. Now I think it's a great idea for bass players, for any church musician who plays a stringed instrument, a guitar, a bass, that kind of thing, maybe not a violin, but a guitar or bass, and you're using an amplifier, get it up on an amp stand. I think that's really important to get it as close to your ears as possible. We can drop the volume, and you're still going to get a nice full sound with the amplifier close to you. The further away that you have the amplifier from your ears, the more room noise you're going to pick up, the more ambient noise you're going to pick up, and that's going to affect your ability to hear the instrument as well. Now you don't want it too close, because bass waves take a little bit of distance to develop. So at lower volumes you can keep it, say, at this distance here, it'd be just fine. At louder volumes, which we're probably not going to experience here at HHAC, you can push the amplifier a little bit further away from you. With that, so you've got the monitor wedge configuration, the 2x10. These 2x10s are great because, and really well suited for our environment here, doing worship music in a church environment, simply because the drivers are smaller, so they're going to be tighter, they're punchier. They were designed for a lot of flexibility, for great sound, and for great sound at close quarters or close environments. Now the amp has 250 watts of power. That's going to be tons and loads of power for what we need. I don't think we're ever going to run short of power on this baby here. So with that, we have just a basic walkthrough, and then we'll dive into some details. Okay, so I want to get plugged in. So I wanted just to run over really quickly about plugging into an amplifier. You're probably all familiar with this. You have used amplifiers before, but I thought it would just be good to take a couple seconds and actually get plugged in and show you some do's and don'ts about getting plugged into this guy. So, got a bass guitar. Just going to take a cable, plug it into the bass guitar. Make sure your volume's down. Okay, we don't want any surprises. Okay, and then what I'm going to do, and this is something I always like to do, I've always been training musicians and sound techs to do this, put a service loop. Okay, so run the cable through the top, and therefore you've got some tension now. Okay, so what this is going to do is create a service loop, so there's no chance of this thing getting inadvertently popped out or twisted in some way. A lot of times with amplifiers that belong to churches, one of the things that gets damaged most is the input jack itself, and that can be alleviated just by putting a service loop in, clicking the 1/4-inch cable in, and there you go. Okay, now before we actually plug it in, I'm just going to I'm just going to put it in halfway so it's actually not connected at all. You can just leave it out if you want to. And I'm going to turn the amplifier on. Okay? By doing this, by leaving the cable out, disengaged from the jack, I'm not going to get any pops when the amplifier turns on. Okay, so the amp is on now, my volume control is down. My volume control is down on the amp as well. I plug in, nice and snug, we're set up, and we're ready to go. Okay, so we're going to do a front panel walkthrough right now. As mentioned, there's a 1/4-inch jack for you to plug into. Beside that is the master volume, or what they call the level control. There is no sub-level control or instrument level plus master level. This is just a 1-channel amp, so it has 1 level control alone. Beside that is a compressor control. So this amplifier has a built-in compressor. It's very, very easy to use. You don't have to be scared of this. It doesn't have a half a dozen different knobs or controls for you to have to try to figure out. It has 1. You can choose how much compression you want to put on the bass. And compression is important because a bass guitar is a very dynamic instrument. You can go from very, very low to very, very high. You can adjust your playing style from very soft to very, very aggressive. And the compressor, what it's going to do is it's going to set upper limits and lower limits for you. So it's almost like an automatic volume control. So that's one of the first things a compressor does. But the second thing that a compressor does is a compressor also shapes tone as well. So it's going to give you a much more even, consistent, tighter, punchier tone to your bass guitar as well. So I do recommend using the compressor, but you're going to need to try it out a little bit, experiment with it to see what it can do. Above that is the compressor light. That'll tell you as you're playing the instrument, the compressor light will come on when it is actually compressing. Beside that is a frequency control. This amplifier has a shape button. When you press the shape button in, and it's going to automatically, it's going to sort of tailor the EQ of the amplifier for a bass guitar. So it's going to give you a little bit of a rise in the low frequencies and a little bit of rise in the higher mid frequencies as well, but it's going to cut a little bit between anywhere between 80 hertz and 1 kilohertz. So you can determine how much cut I want and what frequency I want that cut at. We'll go through that a little bit later and you'll have a chance to hear perhaps how that sounds. Beside that, we have the what they're calling the bass attack overdrive controls, and there are 3 in this section. The first one is harmonics, and that's determining how much of the tube amp circuit we want to apply to our sound. So tube amp circuit is going to warm up your sound, it's going to fatten up your sound, but the further you go, the more you overdrive that circuit, the more distortion you're actually going to be putting into it. And you can get some pretty aggressive effects with that. Now we probably won't be using those here at HHAC, but it's nice to know that you have that flexibility. A little bit of harmonic on the compressor actually will add a nice, fat, punchy sound to the bass. So it'd be good to experiment with that a little bit, and we'll do that a little bit later. The bright control adds high-frequency information, and you can determine how much high-frequency information we want in the overdrive circuit. And then we can choose, with the mix control, how much of the overdrive we want to mix into the regular sound as well, so we can actually blend the overdriven sound into the regular sound as well. Beside that, we have a 7-band EQ, and we can tailor up our individual sound as much or as little as we want. These controls are really, really powerful, guys. It does not take much. I've seen people using these kind of controls on an amplifier, and they're doing this kind of stuff, you know? they're doing that kind of you don't need that. Okay, I'm going to tell you straight up right now, you don't need to do a lot of aggressive EQing for most styles, most common styles of music. Just a little bit go a long way, and we'll try that out a little bit later when we actually get the bass going. And finally, beside that, we have the bass and treble controls. These just give you a nice standard 2-band EQ for really quick, EQing. And again, they're very powerful. When I was trying this amp out earlier, it didn't take much. A little bit of treble, and it completely changed the sound of the bass guitar. And then lastly, beside that is our power button. Okay, so we've reversed the amp around so you can see the back face of the amplifier now. I just wanted to go over some of the controls there. First, to my immediate left here, we have the DAC, the AC control. This is basically where the power cable is going to get plugged in. You're probably familiar with those. Pretty standard piece of kit. Beside that, speaker output. This goes directly to the speakers inside the amplifier themselves. Beside that, the fan for venting the amplifier. Beside that, we have a foot switch control. Probably won't use that. We don't have the foot switch for it, but that just gives you control over the shape and the overdrive sections of the amplifier. So you can kind of set up a couple different ways of using your bass and a couple different sounds that you can quickly access. Beside that, we have a ground lift control. And that basically, if we get a buzz through the front house system, your sound operator will probably be coming back here and engaging the lift control to get rid of that buzz. Beside that, we have the direct out, or the XLR output. This has got a built-in DI on it, so for all of you audio techs out there, you don't need a DI with this. You just basically take the XLR cable, plug it directly into the XLR out or the DI out. Beside that, we have pre and post. There's two ways, audio technicians, to take a signal out of this amplifier. Well, it's three ways if you want to use a microphone, but we're talking about two direct ways. And the first direct way is pre. Okay. If you want to bypass the sounds coming from the front section of the amplifier, so if you just want the sounds of the bass guitar alone, then you would set this to pre, and that is with the switch out. Now, if you want the sounds of the amplifier, so the bass player dials in a brilliant sound, and you want that sound, you can take that just by switching the switch in, and now you're taking the signal post. So post amplifier. Okay? And in the post setting, the level control, or the master volume control on the front face of this guy, does affect the amount of signal you're getting at the board. So audio technicians, you need to be familiar with this section here. The effects section, so if you've got your bass player that likes to use effects pedals, you can set up an effects loop here. If I'm correct, there's not a whole lot of you using effects. And with this amplifier, I don't think that you're really going to need to use a lot of effects. But if you've got your favorite, favorite chorus or something like that, you want to add that in, you can just set up an effects loop here. And then finally, there's an auxiliary in. This is just a couple RCA jacks that if you happen to be at the church and you're plugging into the amplifier and you want to practice along with a CD or an MP3 player, you can just hook that right into the amplifier and you can jam along with your tunes. And that, finally, I told you earlier that this amplifier has a 2x10 with a horn configuration, so two 10-inch woofers and a horn. And that horn can be turned on or off, or it can be attenuated. So in the center position, the center detent, the horn is off. Okay? When I turn it into the on position, so switch it to the right, the horn is on, fully engaged, and you're going to get a really nice bright sound if that's what you're looking for. If that's too much for you, if it's too bright, you don't like the sound of all that string noise, you can switch it into the -6 dB, so it's going to roll off 6 dB of high frequency information, and that's going to temper the sound a little bit, so you get a little bit more brightness out of your sound, but not quite as bright as with the horn fully engaged. And of course, with the horn shut off completely, you're just running on the 210s, you're going to get still a very, very nice sound, but not quite as bright. And I think that's about it for the back face. What we're going to do next is plug the bass guitar in and actually light up some of those controls, so perhaps you can see and hear some of the differences we can make with just a little bit of compression and a little bit of EQ, and just how flexible and diverse this amplifier is.